Hi, it's Chris Newman. Let's investigate te tiriti, hierarchy or dialectic. You may not know the meaning of the word dialectic, but we'll get there. Let's start with hierarchy. You may have heard me talk previously about hierarchy. The hierarchy means there's an order that goes from the greater number to the smaller number, and also in terms of the status, there's a certain elevation of status. And on the Society of 1840 in New Zealand, we had two different hierarchical societies meeting. The well-established Maori tribal society here, rangatira, the top, that's the chiefs, then the tohunga, the warriors, regular folk, and slaves. There's more detail, but that'll give you the general idea. On the side of the Queen and the British side, you've got her delegate through to Captain Hobson, James Clendon, Reverend Williams, James Busby, who was the British resident, and Clerk Freeman. These are the general cast of characters. Plus, of course, there's all the other folk hanging around in New Zealand who were unattached at that time. But the chiefs recognised Captain Hobson's status, and Clendon, Reverend Williams, and so on. And the Maori tribal society, which was very hierarchical, was very competent at recognising the hierarchical levels within the British system as well. So this hierarchical society from 1840, these two groups have intermarried, and over 200 years of intermarriage have produced the people of New Zealand. And also we have what we can call, with all respect, fractional Maori, folk who are a quarter, an eighth, a 16th, a 32nd, a 64th, even 128th part Maori. But they're all really the people of New Zealand. They are no longer the chiefs and tribes of 1840. We've created a new society out of this. And there is, in contemporary society, another force which is working ideologically, the dialectical force. This force says ideologically that these two societies were in conflict, that there was Pakeha and there was Maori. Those words are okay. The words mean, yeah, foreigner or new arrival, and Maori means local or regular people. Okay, that's fine. But each of those societies was in a hierarchical relationship. They were not in a conflict model. In fact, the rangatira were very keen to have their own Pakeha inside. They were bringing Europeans into their society. And there was about, in 1840, we know from the work of Trevor Crosby and other historians, this is Pakeha Slaves, Maori Masters, very interesting book. There was probably about 350 Pakeha, white people, mostly men, living inside Maori society at levels of warriors or technical assistants. Some were just helpers and workers, and some were even slaves. But they were integrated into the society. So there was no Maori Pakeha conflict in that sense. Already most of the conflict was actually between the tribes. So what's this thing going on about colonisation and Maori versus Pakeha? And then that story gets elaborated by the conflict theorists that the Maori were innocent people and these cunning Pakeha came and stole all their land. And I've covered that in a previous video. These were trusting people who were happily getting along together, and everybody loved and trusted everybody else. Wow. Tell that. What's that got to do with Utu? Anyway, and these were deceitful Pakeha who came and manipulated and took power and everything and made them all feel bad. Then there's powerlessness of these Maori and the brutality of the Pakeha. This is a fantasy. In 1840, there was 100,000 Maori And there was possibly 2,000 Europeans here, most of whom were either missionaries or passing through or trying to get a little farm going or whatever, but they had no real power. So this dialectic theory says that A has to be in conflict with B, and this is the conflict model that leads to this new state called C. The workers and the bosses conflict in capitalism, and the result is a socialist society. So they are always looking to this conflict model to try and explain history. However, it's a very destructive belief because there was no conflict in that sense. There was no conflict. The chiefs and tribes were willingly engaging with the incoming folk. They were willingly learning agriculture and trade and getting along with all kinds of other relations with the incomers. Actually, most of the conflict was between the tribes. In fact, we'll just put a little note here, musket wars, because the musket war example disproves and shatters this conflict theory. The tribes were at war with each other, not with the Europeans. So this collapses completely. So now we have to ask this question: status and reality. This theory is claiming status. It's saying in the media, in academia, and now they're trying to teach it in the schools, that the dialectical theory of conflict is the highest status and therefore is real. But we've just proved it isn't. We've established that there is no evidence that there was an ongoing Maori versus Pakeha situation. This is a manufactured divide in recent times for the purpose of political advantage and plunder. And I have covered that in quite some detail in other videos. So, Tiriti, hierarchy or dialectic? I think we can say, without a doubt, hierarchy is the reality and the status of the treaty. And we know that the treaty was about a place called New Tirani, and this, funnily enough, this conflict theory is always associated with a place they call Aotearoa. Aotearoa. So that is interesting because that is like a little giveaway to conflict theory. Conflict theorists are pushing this idea of a Maori nation that was in New Zealand. There was no such thing. Of a separate independent country called Aotearoa. Never existed. But it's a fantasy. But if you get tricked into believing the conflict model, the dialectical model, then you might get convinced of things that aren't true. Whereas if you look at the true historical facts, what happened when you look at the different groups and how they interacted and met, it wasn't about conflict. It was about exploring opportunity. It was about developing cooperation. It was about building unity. The chiefs very well knew about diplomacy because they had explored for centuries through their intertribal warfare. They had explored very sophisticated levels of diplomacy, and they full well understood what they were engaging with when they started diplomatic relations with the British. So I bring this to you because I think it's important that we get rid of this Marxist-based conflict theory, which completely lies about all the facts, but it gets people worked up as if things were the way the ideology says, when in fact the reality is very, very different. We are, after 200 years of intermarriage, the chiefs and tribes, and now their descendants are all fractional Maori, and they're really the people of New Zealand. Thank you.